Pancake, everyone. There were many bright moments of blossoming and progress in the history of mankind. But we must not forget that there were also stories of crimes where people lost their lives. Which of them were exposed to the most publicity? In this episode, we will discuss them. The only woman who was able to take the post of Prime Minister of India. Unfortunately, this title took her life. The first woman in India to hold such a high position was murdered on October 31st, 1984. The motive for the murder was her decision on Operation Blue Star, referring to the storming of the Golden Temple, where the Sikhs were located, who had made an open place of terrorism and a weapons depot out of the shrine. They demanded the creation of an independent state in Punjab. They were radical extremists. The liberation operation was successful, but not without casualties. 500 people died. The retaliation was ruthless. On the day of the murder, the mother of the nation, as the people called her, went to an interview with actor Peter Ustinov. Her path passed through a garden, in which she was accompanied by two guards. The two Sikh assassins were named Beant Singh and Satwan Singh. At 9 p.m., 30 bullets were fired at Indira. One of the killers said, "I did what I had to. Now do whatever you want with me." In connection with this terrible event, India declared 12 days of mourning. Millions of people came to the farewell ceremony. Political persecution and fleeing from her own country. All of this was waiting for the murdered woman after she was the leader of Pakistan, in the position of Prime Minister, which she held twice. Why did they do this to one of the most intelligent women in the country? Once again, a female politician with a firm stance, who had a conflict with the radicals. Her life ended on December 27, 2007, in the city of Rawalpindi. It was a deliberate terrorist attack, in which 116 people were injured, 26 of whom died on the spot. On this day, Bhutto spoke at a rally in front of the people. Leaving in her armored car, she climbed through the hatch to say goodbye, and at that moment, two motorcyclists opened fire on the car, one of whom blew himself up next to the Prime Minister's car. She died because of the hatch hitting her on the head, which was forced at her by the shockwave. After her death, civil uprisings against the police began. Some sources claim that Bhutto knew that an attack was being prepared against her, and that she even requested help from the British Foreign Office. Allegedly, there are even emails confirming this. The situation caused political and social resonance, and the presidents of many countries had something to say about this terrorist attack. The president of Pakistan, Pervez Musharraf, said, "This brutal act of violence is the work of the terrorists we are fighting. It is these terrorists that present the greatest danger for Pakistan and its people." 3 days of mourning were declared. US President George W. Bush also expressed his condolences, and urged Pakistani leadership not to abandon the road towards democracy. Bhutto served her country and served as Prime Minister twice. When she returned to Pakistan earlier this year, she was well aware that she was putting her life in danger, but she denied the killers the right to dictate the course that her country should follow. For freedom of speech, criticism, and harsh expressions against other countries and politicians, once I had to pay the highest price: life. He is a former Swedish Prime Minister who openly criticized the policies of the United States and the Soviet Union. With his political support, the Kurdistan Workers' Party was recognized as a terrorist organization in 1984. 2 years later, he was killed while leaving a cinema in Stockholm, where he was spending an evening with his wife. Christer Patterson, who had 63 crimes on his record, was suspected of the death of the minister. Not everything fit together to confirm that it was he who committed this murder. However, the wife, Lisbeth Palme, identified Christer as the shooter who killed her husband. He was sentenced to life in prison. But in 1989, a court of cassation overturned the sentence for lack of sufficient evidence. After a while, another suspect named Stig Engström was found, though unfortunately the case did not have time to go to court, since he committed suicide in 2000. But the investigation did not end there. 10,000 people were interviewed, 134 witnesses, and 22,000 pieces of evidence were attached to the case. This is a colossal investigation that has gone down in the history of Sweden. Before that, he was just a witness, but he very often changed his testimony, and his version was very different from everyone else, and he was among the first at the crime scene. A reassessment of his role occurred 20 years after his death. The incident was reflected in dozens of books about the murders, which featured the PKK terrorist organization. which according to the majority is also involved in this incident, one of the most high-profile stories in the field of political assassinations, which raises questions to this day. A film of the same name, The Kennedy Assassination, was even shot about the incident. On November 22, 1963, the sunny streets of Dallas, Texas met the 35th President of the United States, John F. Kennedy. It was there that he was last seen alive. At 12:30 local time, his heart stopped beating. The killer turned out to be Lee Harvey Oswald. 60 years later, the US government, together with the CIA, declassified about 1,500 archival materials related to this incident. These documents mention anonymous calls made in 1962 and 1963, in which an unknown person spoke for the first time about a conspiracy and a plan to assassinate the president by the communists of England and Hong Kong. The second call was made 2 days after the murder, where an unknown person claimed that the Soviet government organized this attempt and sponsored it financially. US intelligence agencies denied the involvement of the USSR in this crime, and did not find any links confirming the hiring of Oswald. For a long time, there were discussions that the killer did not work alone, but rather as part of a group by common agreement. The agency and its residencies, especially in Mexico City and Miami, did not lose sight of the possibility that Oswald did not act alone. A quote from one archival document: "It was not possible to find evidence of the involvement of other persons, so the conclusion of the commission was that the killer acted alone for unspecified reasons." American citizens disagree with this conclusion. According to the latest social survey conducted in 2017, 61% of residents do not believe that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone, and that this murder was a coincidence. Much remains a mystery, and most of the documents will only be declassified this year. So we can only guess whether it was a mafia conspiracy or just a mentally unstable member of society. Dear viewers of the Pancake channel, if you've watched the video up to this point, then it must be interesting. If that is the case, then why don't you go ahead and give this video a like, to help us continue putting out informative content on YouTube. Enjoy the rest of the episode. The fight against mass shootings is very active, but such modern, horrific cases, which even the national leader pay attention to, only says that there is a lot of work to do. At the Molson Coors Brewery in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, one of the employees opened fire on former colleagues. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon local time, the shooter entered the building armed and started shooting at the company's employees. The motive for such an action was him being laid off on that very same day. 5 people were killed, and the shooter himself committed suicide. The names are not disclosed by the investigation. The incident caused the locals to panic. Parents began to take their children home from nearby schools, and doors were closed with 3 locks. The mayor of the city called the shooting at the brewery a public tragedy. This was the 11th in 15 years case of a shooting with a large number of victims, and the case led to an onslaught on the Democratic Party, with a call to adopt a law that makes it more difficult for people with mental illnesses to buy a firearm. The incident also got the attention of US President Donald Trump, who was supposed to start a press conference about measures against the coronavirus, but the White House decided to start it with a statement on the Milwaukee shooting. Here's what the president had to say. "A vile murderer opened fire at the Molson Coors Brewing Company. He took the lives of 5 people. Such attention is not accidental, because terrorist attacks are a pressing issue in the country, especially in Wisconsin, which is important as a state for the political struggle for power. Measures to prevent such gun incidents are still in development." What got the Russian editor-in-chief of Forbes magazine? Khlebnikov was a brave journalist with Russian roots, who made public all of the stories of the oligarchs to show people the truth. He was not afraid to reveal the most elaborate schemes of billionaires. On July 9, 2004, when he was leaving the editorial office heading to the subway, a black car caught up with him. From an open window, the killer fired 9 bullets, 4 of which hit Khlebnikov. Even so, he was still breathing. After asking for help from passersby, he was brought to Newsweek's office, which was in the same building as Forbes. He was even able to describe the assassin, though he did not know him personally. It was a man with dark hair, approximately 35 years old. Paul was still able to talk. He said, "I do not know why I was shot at." So an ambulance was called for him, and already being in the hospital on a stretcher, A team of doctors and the journalist himself were stuck in the hospital elevator, where the victim ultimately died. The doctors said that even if they had managed to bring him to the operating room, his injuries were fatal. The investigation charged the Chechen separatist leader Kaj Ahmed Nukayev with ordering the hit, with the actual perpetrators being Fail Satradinov, as well as Kazbek Dukuzov and Musa Vakayev, who were natives of Chechnya. On May 6, 2006, the latter three defendants were acquitted based on a jury verdict. Another president of the United States has joined the ranks of those killed by his detractors. Is it a tradition or a coincidence? William was elected to the presidential term twice. The first time was in 1896, when the states were in a serious economic crisis, which the newly elected president was successfully able to combat. He became president for the second time in the year 1900. He was very fond of the public, and was extremely neglectful when it came to security, because of which the secretary was panicking, fearing an assassination attempt. His fears were justified. On September 6, 1901, McKinley was in a concert hall at the World Pan American Exposition in Buffalo. It was Presidential Day, which involved a speech to the public. The head of state, surrounded by guards and soldiers, greeted the people who were standing in line. His killer, Leon Cholgaz, was also standing there. Once he was first in line and standing right in front of William, 2 shots were fired. The guards and even the waiters rushed to disarm the criminal. Someone even beat Cholgaz with a tray. What's amazing is that the wounded man asked to be more careful with the killer. The first bullet missed, but the second one did hit him in the stomach, causing damage to vital organs, going through his stomach, pancreas, kidney, and then getting stuck in the muscles of his back. They were not able to remove the bullet, but for a full 8 days, the president felt good, sat straight, ate, spoke with his wife, but on September 14th, he passed away. Leon was an avid anarchist, did not hide that he was acting alone, almost immediately confessed to the crime. On the evening of the same day of the assassination attempt, he said, "I killed President McKinley because I'd done my duty. I didn't believe one man should have so much service and another man should have none." On September 26th, Leon was sentenced to death by electric chair. The death of a creative personality entailed colossal changes in the structure of law and protection. Tahar is one of the most famous poets and journalists in Algeria. For a long time, he worked as a journalist in a French-language weekly publication, where he published articles about artists and sculptors, as well as about Algerian writers. After that, he lived with his family near Paris, and worked there. Upon returning to his homeland in just 3 years, he made a wonderful career for himself as a writer in the country, enjoying popularity and professional acclaim. He has 5 poems and 6 novels on his account, which are still being translated to many languages of the world. At one point in his career, after retiring from art, he began writing political chronicles. His attitude towards Islamist organizations was extremely categorical, so he also spoke sharply. How can the youth whose symbols were Che Guevara, Angela Davis, Kateb Yassin, Frantz Fanon, who fought for their freedom, beauty, and light, have as their heirs the youth who take for idols preachers, who instruct retribution and hatred, ideologues of alienation and death, he said in 1992. He was attacked on May 26, 1993, when the young journalist was leaving home. He was shot twice in the head from close range, which caused him to die 2 weeks later in a coma, never having regained consciousness. His killers were an armed Islamic group that did not share his support for secularism. One of the killers said he was killed because he possessed a fearsome pen that could have an impact on Islamic sectors. After the murder, the French organization called for the creation of a body for the protection of writers, which in the modern world is called the International Writers' Parliament. The BBC in turn made a film about the journalist, Shooting a Writer. How do you like today's topic? Let us know in the comments what you think about these crimes, and what impressed you the most. Be sure to like the video to see us in your recommendations more often, and if you are not subscribed to the most informative channel, it's time to press the red button. Pancake was with you. We wish you a good mood and a fair wind. See you next time. Pancake, everyone.